This conference will now be recorded.
Go to meetings talking in my ear. So anyway, and I've served as a volunteer to the city since 2010. My most latest stint was as the judge from 2015 to 2019, but I've been on the Board of Adjustment and the Board of the Building Committee, and I'm back on the Board of Adjustment as its chairman. And in any case, I got a lot of support from the folks at the airport when I ran for council last go around. And I've been up there a few times and flown in and out of it a couple of times. And I thought maybe I could help. I'm an attorney that has done a lot in the oil and gas industry, working with companies to get through P&Z's committees and get through to city councils to get what we needed. But in this case, I figured, well, I speak both city and I speak aviation, so I thought I could help. And Mr. Prince was kind enough to nominate me, and the rest of the council was kind enough not to object to me. So here I am.
I appreciate all your following of the council and your summaries. Appreciate that. Mr. Raywalt.
Jim Raywalt, and I lived in Lago Vista. I bought property here in 2000. My wife Susie and I live on the lake. Been a pilot for over 45 years, instrument rated, second generation aviator. Have owned 7 lots up at the airport. Currently have a hangar and a new 2020 SR-22 in it. My wife Susie is also a pilot and a member of the 99s. Career-wise, I've owned 17 different companies. Sit on the board of directors of PPG Industries, and I've sold most of the big companies and kind of living the good life up here on Lake Travis. I've been a past president of the board of directors, Lago Vista, past president of the Property Owners Association, current member of the advisory board, and aviation is a passion of mine, love it, and hopefully can continue to make contributions to grow the airport at Lago Vista. It's been a passion of mine to get the city profitable to where they've always been airport rich and real estate poor, and have helped guide them into buying more property through grants, and hopefully with the fuel concession and moving forward on some other projects that we're going to talk about tonight will make the city even more profitable. And the airport's a great place, been there for 20 years.
All right, and I see James Peck.
Hi, you guys hear me okay?
Very good.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure. I had some mic issues when we first got started. So James Peck, my family and I purchased property at the airport back in 2013. We knew that we would ultimately become aviators, but we weren't flying back then. That resolved itself pretty quickly as we made some friends here at the airport. And so I've been a pilot since 2013. I've served on our property owners board for 3 years, and this is my second year serving this airport advisory board. Basically, the more I got to know about the airport, the more I realized that everything that's really succeeded here has been because of the efforts of the property owners here and the people at the city working in a really good symbiotic relationship. And that it was something that took a large amount of time, and that so many of the other property owners had donated their time. And the more that I got involved out here, the more I realized that I had the ability and the interest to be able to take on this role, just to kind of carry the torch from those who came and made all this work before us. So looking forward to continuing to help the city as they are transitioning into kind of a new era with the airport and taking a bigger interest in trying to make sure that the airport becomes something that can operate itself on its own accord financially, and then start to become profitable. And it's been a really neat transition over the past 5 years to watch the city acquire property and start to grow that interest here. And just very much look forward to continuing to help that process along.
All right, thanks, James. My name's Glenn Chappie. I moved here to live in 2015, but I bought my first property on the Lago Vista Airport in 1997. I've been a pilot since 1981. That's a long time ago, and certainly aviation is in the blood. But I appreciate the fact we have a diverse group of people. So thank you all for serving, for coming here. We'll get right to the business and try to march through these items. We're going to have some other items that'll come up throughout the year. We'll probably try to have a regular meeting. We did say we try to meet every other month and set some agenda like that. That may flux a little bit, but for right now, just plan on we'll probably try to have every other month. We'll try to have a meeting and get that schedule out to everyone. We'll probably do it on a Tuesday at 6 p.m. and continue this sort of cadence. To that end, there's a lot of people on this board with a lot of different abilities, capabilities, and it really makes for nice advice. I mean, you all swore in, and what we're trying to do is do the best thing for Lago Vista, and make sure we're representing that duty accordingly. I will say that the airport is in the black. The airport today is not a burden on the city. It's actually a financial plus. There's a lot of reasons for that. You've got some people on this board. Jim Awalt's I look at Jim, he's sort of the historian of how we got here, all the agreements and so forth. And as he was part of that transition when the city actually acquired the airport. James Peck is the head of the POA. He's president of the POA at the airport and served in that position, I want to say, for 2 or 3 years. So he also has a good handle on what's going on up here. And then all of you bring all your multiple talents. So going to that, it's time to pick up some officers and chairs. So we'll do a chair, vice chair, and secretary to serve this next year. The secretary will be the person taking the notes, and we do not have city secretary taking minutes anymore. So Linda, I know we had leaned on you before for this meeting. Are you taking any notes?
Are we not recording the meeting for me to do minutes after?
We are. Remember, I believe Roy probably is the host here tonight. Is that? And I saw him click on and off record. And if you look in the upper corner of your screen, it's saying record. It's okay. Let's go to it.
It's so slow, it kind of reacts slowly, but it's definitely recording.
Glenn, if I may, so one of my roles as liaison is sort of to be the parliamentarian of rules, and Roy can help me if I mess this up at all, but I believe that legally we are still required to have minutes that are recorded. So, to the extent that, and those minutes don't have to be a play-by-play. The audio video that Mr. Jambor is running, will capture the play-by-play for people who want to go watch it on YouTube. But in any time that the board actually makes formally wants to make a recommendation to council, anything you vote on, that needs to be recorded in the minutes. So, for example, tonight when you select, a new chairman, a new secretary, that's an example of something that should go in the minutes. So I think the minutes do need to continue to exist. We'll still need to be a secretary, but it's probably a pretty minimal task.
Okay, well, as of right now, let's put up nominations for chair.
I'd like to make a comment. We were pretty limited because of COVID and many things during last year. I'd like to make a nomination that we continue with the current slate of officers by acclamation, if that's appropriate.
To clarify, that would be me as chair, James Peck as vice chair, so we'll serve in that, and Linda Aird as secretary.
That's correct.
Is that a motion? Or Paul, are you going to be parliamentarian?
Are they all willing to do it?
Linda's the one that we got to ask. That's
Linda, now's the time to get out if you don't want to do it.
A new pair of earbuds to listen to the recording from from the past year. So I think I'm good to go.
All right. I mean, if you want to pass the torch, Linda, you certainly can. All right. So, Jim, is that a motion?
Yeah, that is a motion.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? I'm happy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. So I counted enough hands to count a majority, so that it passed. All right. So comments from the council liaison is the next thing on the agenda. So Paul, how are things? What's the vibe at the council relative to the airport?
Vibe at the council, there's a lot of things going on these days. There are some things that we need to resolve around the airport, but I think as you already said, it's an operation that's in the black, and so my perspective is, don't let's not break it. Let's move forward in a positive way. And there's obviously some things we need to do. There were some things in the CIP last year, a capital improvement plan last year relative to the airport, and we need to talk through those and work through the funding with TxDOT on those. But all in all, good things. I did want to say that as I was looking at the people that were applying this year, there were 3 open positions for the board this year, and there were actually 7 people that applied. So I guess if you look at the history of the city, there hasn't always been enough applicants to fill every seat on a board. So this year we got a lot of citizens that were willing to apply, and that's great news. So I looked through that list of 7. We do have in our ordinance, we say that we can have up to 4 of the RAA POA members on this board. And there were 3 that were carrying forward in their terms, POA members. And so Mr. Lowry was one of the applicants, and he makes up the 4th POA member. So we have 4 POA members that are on the board now, and 3 that are non-POA members. So I think it's a nice mix, a nice folks that understand both the history, have passion for the airport and aviation, and folks that are just sort of interested citizens that can balance us out. So I think it's all good news. My role, of course, is to convey information from the council to the board and vice versa. So as a rule, I will try to intentionally abstain from discussions as they go along. Certainly, I'm not a voting member of the board, but I want to make sure that appropriate procedures are followed, and that I understand the conversation behind any recommendations that you make to take to the city council, so I can represent you well going back to the council.
Well, we appreciate that. I mean, you're going to be our conduit back, and I've got Roy on the phone as well. And one of the things we get moving through the agenda here, if that's okay, Paul, we'll just pop onto the resealing of the runway. It's on the agenda here, team, because for the board, members of the board, TxDOT our airport mid last and assessment of the condition of the pavement. Our airport, as you know, is a public airport. It's used by anyone and everyone who wants to fly in. It's open. You don't need permission to come into Lago Vista and land your aircraft. You simply need to be able to meet the minimum requirements of operating on the length of runway and the runway to come out in it. So that being said, TxDOT comes out and they check on things, and they told us that our runway is in a condition that requires maintenance. The word resealing may be light on what the detail is, but the TxDOT engineers, I had a chance to meet with them. It was before Paul's tenure, and even before our downtown city manager was in his role. So the previous city manager participated. Roy was up here, and basically they told us that TxDOT said we would have they set the priority that our projects that we had planned relative to TxDOT helping us with projects were on hold until we got the runway resealed or repaired. It's a slurry mix of some kind. The TxDOT engineers estimated that cost to be around $300,000 to $350,000 at the time. And we as a city accrue AQP money, or is that the right term, Roy? AQP money? $150,000 a year?
Yes, sir. It's discretionary funds. I think it's NPE is the actual.
Okay. And So we accrue $150,000 a year. We can bank up to $600,000 on that. So every TxDOT gives us some money, and TxDOT basically looked at us and said, "You're going to spend that money on the airport." At that time, I believe we had still in our account something like $180,000, $170,000, and now we're in the new year. Excuse me for coughing in your ear, folks. Sorry, Mr. Durbin, because he's got the earbuds. But
It's okay.
we should have accumulated our next 150,000, which should get us to a place where we've got enough money to do the job. So really, that effort to do that is set by TxDOT. I would like this board, this advisory board, to formally make a recommendation to council to direct the city manager to move forward expeditiously with getting bids and getting this done. It holds up everything else at the airport, and I believe we have the finances to do it. So that's kind of where I was moving with that agenda item. We need to sort of rock forward and get moving. I don't know. Now I'll ask Paul Prince as the liaison. Do you know of any activity? Has any bids been let? Has the city manager done anything on this at all?
Well, I think that Roy may have some things to add, but I believe that the current status is bids have not been let. The new city manager is, I'll say, lightly aware of the status of things up at the airport, but especially given our freeze event recently, I think he's been pretty distracted. Roy, I know you and Eric and I had a short meeting with the TxDOT guys recently. There was a little bit of discussion of this, some discussion of different ways of getting the bidding done and who would do the work, whether it's city or somebody else. So feel free to add anything to that.
No, and I'll be honest with you, it was a little disappointing that Eric couldn't stay for the whole meeting. That conversation would have gotten into some of the technical aspects, and so we could have discussed the various pricing options, because the varying costs are pretty significant about how they do it and where they do it. We could let them do it, but the cost to the city would be very great compared to doing it on our own. And that was based on Eric's input. And I was sorry that he couldn't stay longer and go through all the nuts and bolts of that, because quite frankly, it's over my head. Half the techniques they discuss, I'm not even familiar with. I'm a concrete guy. All this slurry, asphalt stuff is news to me.
It remains that we just don't want to have this delay. I believe the funds, with the accrual of the New Year's money, we should be in a position. So I think we need to have
I don't think we have quite as much as you think we do. One of the accounting statements of those funds occurred before they deducted the amount for the last lot purchase. So it's a little less than we thought. So that they sent us a accounting sheet after we had already closed on that lot, but they hadn't taken the money out. So that kind of fooled us. But
as the advisory board to the city, I think this is a priority, and we need to make a recommendation to the council to make this a priority. So, I think we need to move with forward. Somebody needs to count for how much money we do have, how much it's going to cost, and when we can let this project up, because it's holding up things that make the city money. And we'll talk about those later on, okay? So
Glenn, this is the third time that we've done a runway improvement since I've been there. One, since the great freeze of 2021, the runway and taxiways have been degraded significantly. It's my experience, step one is to get the council to move forward with TxDOT, and two, the first step they do is the engineering. That doesn't happen just overnight. And then the contracts are let, then the work begins, et cetera. So Roy, to that point, there may be more time to accrue additional money, and gives us time to, get what the accounting is, but we need to get, I concur with Glenn, we need to get the ball running.
Yes, sir. And just to be clear, I think and I'm speaking, the way I understood, our assigned planner, Mr. Breck's statement, their expectation would be that we use whatever NPE funds are available and that they would support other funding sources to make up the balance. They weren't expecting any more than that 90-10 NPE match of whatever those funds were.
They wanted us to use up our NPE, but if it was short, they had other funds that they could direct.
They would treat that as a valid capital project, as I appreciate.
And so let's do this. Let's ask the council to direct a priority upon the manager. I make a motion that we direct the council, make a recommendation to council to move expeditiously on the repair of the runway, the resurfacing of the runway, and the resurfacing of the taxiways damaged by the freeze. And we direct ask council to direct the city manager to address those, start the process of gathering the engineering information, scoping the project, and working on bids. We're happy to support, but this needs to get going. So that's my motion.
This is still, if you've made the motion, then I'll second it. I'm happy to make that motion. But if that's your motion, Glenn, I'll second it.
All right. Anybody, any comments on that? All right, let's vote if we'll move that forward and say, okay, council to direct the city manager to set a priority to begin the engineering work it takes to refix the taxiways up here and resurface the runway as directed by TxDOT. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
As an aside from that one, do we know, has anybody had any direct conversations with the city manager if he's going to need any guidance or support for any of those conversations with TxDOT? Should we be proactive and make sure that he knows that he has the support of one or a number of us to help walk him through that process and make those contacts?
Good point, James. I think, I had wanted to reach out to Roger and see, say, introduce ourselves, bring him up to the airport, say, hey, this is what you got here, come look around.
No doubt.
The members, right? But again, the freeze and this ice-mageddon and all that stuff kind of did get in the way. But if one of you on the board would like to reach out to him and make that offer, I think that would be appropriate. Let's pick one. So James, you want to take it, or you and AWOL?
Well, gentlemen, I know I'm the rookie here. I did just meet with Roger this week, actually Friday of last week, and not as an official member of the board, just as a member of the POA and the landowner up there, invited him up, and he was very eager to come and meet with us. So I think he's going to be very receptive, and if we can make it a meaningful meeting, talking through the technical aspects of the repairs that are needed, that would be even better. But I think he is interested in meeting the folks on top of the hill.
All right, well, let's two volunteers from the board to host the discussion and make that connection. Okay.
I'm happy to go along with that as well, but I give up that spot if somebody else wants to take it.
All right. Well, that's not a formal motion. It's not a formal move, but you guys can reach out to Roger. That way we don't inundate the gentleman. All right.
Sure.
Let's move on here. So completion of the south hangar project. This project, and I'm not going to have a screen share to show you the project, folks. For the folks new to the board, the city owns about, I think it's like 5 lots or 4 lots down at the southwest corner of the airport. The city ended up with those. It's doing nothing but being flat grassland right now. And this board proposed in a couple of years past to maybe build some hangars. The city engineer did the history of this. The city engineer did work with the FAA for an approval of the height of the building and the scope of the building. And we did receive, with some restriction, enough of a permission from the FAA to proceed. Now, that's great news, because what that does is basically we're mapping out for 9 hangars. These would be owned by the city. They would be built with money, cooperative money from TxDOT and the city. The split of funds can vary depending on how they categorize the program, but those 9 hangars in today's market would rent for about $500 a month pretty quickly. You'd have no problem filling them up today. That is income to the city that the city basically, when we did the budget, the city would be out of pocket about $150,000, their contribution to the project. And the revenue from those hangars would be about $54,000 a year back to the city, which is phenomenal. Pays for itself in less than 3 years. And at that point, it's just more money for the city to operate the airport. Now, that being said, we're ready to go with that project, but we may back up to the previous situation on the runway. We don't have any money. So we'll have to sort of table that project for a little while. But that's the kind of thing that really can turn this airport into a nice gem for the city of Lago Vista. And that's the idea is, once these hangars are built, the city's debt is paid back very quickly. And this is the gift that keeps on giving. At $6,000 a year per hangar, it's a big deal, and it matters. And it'll help facilitate growth of maybe building more of these type of hangars on other properties the city owns. So that being said, this is a discussion about that project, but really I wanted to share with everyone what that project is. If anybody has any questions about it, I can share a presentation that the AAB shared. It's got some maps and some scope of that. But that project was a high priority. It was approved by this board, I want to say about December 2019 meeting. And the city council also reviewed it. 2020, early COVID, one of the first COVID meetings they had, it was all virtual. In March city council meeting, where they said, yes, let's move forward on it. Unfortunately, we got a little bit of a hiccup here because of the TxDOT monies. But I don't know that there's anything to do short of the money. If anybody's got some ideas on how we might take action and move that along, it's a nice income producer for the city. But I think we'll have to wait for it.
Glenn, I've got a question. Is the city limited by ordinance or policy to only spend money in this part of the city from money generated by the airport or by TxDOT?
It's an enterprise fund. So airport money that's made by the city has to be spent back on the airport. It's part of the partnership with TxDOT. Does that answer your question?
I think I'm asking the other side of that. I understand if funds are generated at the airport, they have to stay at the airport. But are funds generated elsewhere within the city able to be spent at the airport?
Yes.
Are there other funds available that could be targeted towards generating an income to the city here?
I don't know the answer to that one. But,
Historically, I have seen the city council be able to make an allocation from the general fund to various different expenses in the city. I don't think the airport would be unique in that regard. I think that's happened before for some of the property acquisition, some of the lots that the city purchased.
Yeah, they used bond money to purchase the last property, some of the last property. So from other areas of the city, they had bond money available, and they closed with bond money. So it was already available to them. So could the city do this without TxDOT's cooperation? Yeah. Could they do it and start making money? Yeah. The scope of the cost of the project's about $600,000. Pavement, utilities, everything needed. It's about $600,000 to build these boxes down there. These boxes of AKA hangars. And if the city wanted to say that's a good deal, to make $54,000 a year for a $600,000 investment. By the way, if anybody's got an investment like that I put my money into, I'm all over it, right? But if the city wanted to, the city could.
As an aside to that, if the city does put up any money there's nothing from TxDOT that says if we meet the requirements of what they're looking for with pavement, that there still wouldn't be some sort of fund matching for this hangar project, something either 75-25 or 90-10. So it might not be that 600K that you're talking about there. Is that correct from what you understand from what they've approved and from the notes that they've made about the pavement?
That's my understanding, James. I mean, if
Got it.
you get some of these projects rolling, with pavement project rolling, we can ask for them, we can help them set priorities. We say, hey, we need the money for this. And,
Right.
there are options for them to cover the paving project out of some other fund and give us the NPE funds that we can use to do this. But it's a little bit of lobbying, but step one has to happen before we get to step two. So
no doubt. I think making sure that we don't lose sight of the project, especially given the more recent approval. So through the entire paving thing, making sure that whoever we're working with at TxDOT, and then whoever's coming at it from the city point of view, keeps that big picture view in mind, that this was a goal before the pavement became a concern, and that we still want to be doing everything we can to be as proactive to meet that goal as we can.
Yeah, this is a good deal. I mean, 9 more airplanes down there buying gas at the pumps, paying profit, all of it. It's
a beautiful thing for the city, and trying to make sure that we can have TxDOT help as much as they wanted to before this pavement concern became a thing is going to be important too, just to keep the costs to the local costs within check.
Yep.
Well, the good news
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
the good news with the current stimulus money that has been allocated by the Congress, TxDOT is still subject to getting funded from the Fed. They have discretionary money that comes from TxDOT itself. But the good news is there's going to be a lot of money falling towards Texas. It says TxDOT will be funded by the Fed for future projects. So the sooner we get our hat in the ring, better off we are.
Thank you, Jim, for saying that. I was going to make a similar statement, and in the spirit of being able to walk and chew gum, it makes sense that we might even this evening make a recommendation that Paul could take back, so that we keep those hangars on the forefront and let the council decide whether or not they have funds or when they might be able to find the funds.
Would you like to make a motion on that? Go ahead. Paul, go ahead.
Well, it's a clarifying question. I'm looking in the city budget and in the capital improvement program section, and what's in there for this fiscal year is $650,000 for the hangar project, and then an additional $1.5 million next year. So the total project cost would be $2.15 million. And I'm just wondering, do you all believe those numbers are valid? I'm not sure what the source of those numbers were and whether that's an accurate cost. But it'd be good to know if that's still a valid expense for the total project.
I believe those. So I think I know where those numbers came from. Those numbers came from this hangar project, which scoped at $600,000 to $650,000, and the previous city manager did roll those in there. Now, Paul, help me understand. Does that mean there's budget for that? The city's going to spend money on that?
So there is for this fiscal year a $650,000 line item in the budget. I was not a council member at the time this budget was approved, but I'll tell you, I was in all those discussions. It was very clear this line item was approved under the assumption that it was a heavily I don't remember if it was a 90-10. I think it was a 90-10 assumption that went into that. So to the extent that we can't get a 90-10, I think that this council would say that's no longer valid. We can't spend $650,000 out of the city's pocket. We were assuming a 90-10 for that. So that's the answer, I think, to your question, Glenn. The second part of my question was, there's an additional $1.5 million that's shown in a future estimate for the following year. So in order to get these hangars done, does it take both the $650K plus the $1.5 million, or what would we all get for the first increment of spend of $650,000 versus the second increment of spend of an additional $1.5 million?
The second number is the number estimated to do, was cut number to do ramp project, which is that central area where currently we have airplane parking and a fuel pump. There was some leveling and dirt work and street moving and things like that just been talked about by this board. So that's where that second number came from. Okay, so clearly it's wonderful that the city manager rolled those into the budget, but you know, I like money we can, I like projects we can, you know, we can bank and get moving. So I'm not sure what that exactly means. We have $650,000 line item in the budget for capital improvement. That may be they're ready to spend it, provided they, with the caveat that they're going to get 90-10 money back. To that end, yeah, we should ask for that. The city should ask for that. The person to do the asking is probably the city manager in the city. So Steve Lowry, back to your comment. Yes, I would like a motion in that to move forward, since the city now, as Paul Prince lets us know that there's a line item in the budget for the CIP that the city would like for this to do it. And let's see if we hold TxDOT's feet to their fire if they want to do the pavement first or not. I'll ask for it all.
Right, and we can sequence it. So
let me ask a question. What is the total square footage footprint of the hangars, not including the taxiways?
I don't have that in front of me right now, Ewald. Each one is about, if you want to do some quick math, it's about 1,200 to 1,300 square feet per hangar times 9.
Times 9?
Yeah, we figured $12.50 for concrete under the hangar. We figured $8.50 per square foot for the taxiways and the paving, and then we had a material estimate from a steel erector and a steel company that were just, you know, swags on that. It came up with $6.50. It wasn't a dart throw at the board. It was, you know, there's some science behind it. I think it's pretty darn reasonable.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now I don't know if concrete prices have changed, but it was $12.50 a foot. That's what we used. All right, back to Steve. You want to help us formulate a recommendation here?
Yeah, well, you were doing such a good job on the first motion. If you make the motion, I'm happy to second it, Glenn. But I just want to make sure that I'm clear in understanding. There's no question for any of us here that the taxiway reparation, the runway reparation are absolute first priority, but that this can be running right behind that, right? So we don't want to create any confusion for City Council or for TxDOT in that, but also we don't want to wait 2 months for the next advisory board meeting to make the recommendation to start forward on the hangars.
Yeah,
so,
again, the City Council's already approved this project. The line items in the budget, so the budget was approved, which is all agreeing with the information that, you know, last spring when this council met and had it. So, you know, I don't know if this board needs to make a formal motion, or whether we just need to, you know, when you meet the city manager, bring it up and say, hey, let's go, it's in there, and show him, you know. So if anybody wants to take an action here, I'm willing to, but I'm afraid I'm having writer's block for putting together something that would sound reasonable, since it's already been approved.
Yeah, I've got it here. James, if you're willing, nod your head. He and I will have the conversation with the city manager, and then maybe circle back with Paul to ensure that the right language is in front of council for their next meeting.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Hey, Paul.
Thank you.
How long is interim with regard to interim city manager?
Restate your question, Jim.
How long is interim with regard to interim city manager?
So interim is in place until we hire a permanent. And so I'm glad you asked that. I was thinking about that earlier. Should have said that in my comments. So previous city manager turned in his resignation early December. January 10th, he was officially done as city manager of Lago Vista. We brought in the interim Roger maybe a week or two after that. And we also kicked off the process for doing a permanent hire. We have employed a company to help us put together a package for a hire, screen resumes, all that kind of stuff. The last I saw, Jim, on the schedule, it looks to me like you know, we're probably tracking to maybe early June, we could be making an offer for a new permanent. And then there may be some transition time depending on where that person physically is. So, you know, it could be June, July timeframe, probably not before that. And hopefully, you know, if things get haywired in the system and we have to do a two-step on the, you know, for example, I know last go around when the city hired the current or the most recent city manager, there were some folks that made offers too who got other offers, and so they kind of had to do a reset. So it could go longer than that, but I'm hoping that by June, July, we'll have our permanent in place.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna say we'll take no action on this. We have the team knows about it. You're educated, Mr. Durbin.
Just real quick, and that is if you all are going to intend to have Mr. Chan go talk to TxDOT or anybody for that matter, I would suggest that you offer and maybe have Paul suggest that he bring one of you guys with him, the most knowledgeable, the most well, the guy who can lay it out very clearly. But luckily, we got a lot of guys who appear can speak very concisely. But Mr. Chan is not going to be able to speak the same language as those guys, and he's not going to have a clue because, you know, I've been trying to get up to speed on everything that's going on up here and looking back in the history and reading all your old deed records and all that sort of stuff. He's going to need a lot of help. It'll be a lot more efficient and a lot better off is if somebody from this group goes with him. So, you know, if just a suggestion. I know he's gone.
We appreciate that.
He's been asked to go off and talk to other people, and I know it's not gone that well. So
no, we actually, you're gonna find everybody running to the door to try to go to. It'll be an airport advisory board TxDOT office. But we appreciate that. I think you're right on. Hey, who's got the go to meeting tonight? Can you make me the presenter so I can share a screenshot?
Yes, sir. Hang on one second. It says you're there.
All right, let's see. I'll see if I can share my screen. Oh, look at that. I'll pick that screen right there. Share. Boom. All right. What I'm showing you here is the property that is where the hangars would go. But I also wanted to share this screen with you too because it's got some relevance to our next item agenda. Just because I want to use the map. If there's any more questions on the hangar project, I think we're going to wrap that up and move on to the next issue. All right, the next agenda item is to talk about the rezoning of some properties that were done. Let me put this in presentation mode. Whoops, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna show this to y'all, but these properties to the east of the runway here. This is Rawhide Trail that comes around. This is Rolling Hills Trail that is right here by these hangars. These properties, if you look on how they're platted, are very small. I mean, there's probably 20 properties in this area right here, and there's again another 20 properties or so on these cul-de-sacs in this other area. Can you see my pointer? Is that coming through?
Yes.
It is.
Okay. What happened was the airport action plan that was passed in 2015. It's a long-term plan for how the airport should behave. The city hired a engineer to do this plan and help us, and the engineer made recommendations. One of the recommendations was these lots were zoned at the time residential. So you can see that someone could build a home in a house very close to where a run-up area, a big airplane's making a lot of noise. They recommended that zoning be changed. This happened in 2015. The recommendation came through the airport action plan, which you all have a copy of. It's on the website. but that was recommended that these lots and other lots, these lots off Bar K Ranch Road and some of these other lots, different recommendations were made. Okay, here's the issue. At some point, the P&Z group did rezone these lots from residential. Okay, they rezoned them to light industrial. This was a mistake. Not that it was a mistake at the time. We were trying to, and I was a part of it, we were trying to rezone, but nobody knew what light industrial, nobody pointed out what light industrial, what consequences might be there for those properties. Light industrial, as Roy can attest, will tell you that you could have an open storage site. You could probably put a cement plant. There's all kinds of nastiness you could put into your community in Lago Vista with a zoning like that in this area. Since then, a year ago, about a year ago, the Airport Advisory Board got together and said, hey, Frank Robbins was our council liaison at the time. He had extensive knowledge of zoning. And we said, and Roy helped council. We said, what should we do? And the suggestion was to get that light industrial zoning out of there and get to a commercial standard. That would mean someone would have to build a building before they could, for example, put a perimeter fence around it and things like that. It's a higher standard of how things should look. It's still commercial. It's not anybody building their dream home next to an airport, which is not a good mix. So it's still commercial. And we said, well, what the city, as you know, has several different commercial capabilities, categories of zoning. And I think the recommendation was, and Roy, I'll look to you for some confirmation, C4 airport. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And I'll be honest with you. I think that's what the intent of the airport action plan was. It's just those guys are, in fact, they're aviation planners. They're engineering types. They're not land use planners. So they probably never looked at the exact definitions of our zoning districts. And somebody should have woke up and realized that they meant C4. I think the intent is you need more zoning to allow what's already there, the hangar homes, the hangar businesses, that sort of thing. And we're simply trying to correct that and implement what we think the obvious intent was.
Well, so I want to say that the Airport Advisory Board meeting in December of 2019, this issue exactly came up, was discussed just as we're doing now. And we made the recommendation to council to please direct P&Z to rezone this to prevent some of the ugliness of trash dumping and material dumping and old wrecked trucks that have accumulated in some of these areas. All right, that being done, the council also considered this in one of their meetings in the first quarter of 2020 and said, yes, let's do it. But since then, no action has taken place. I bring this to this board because I want this board to, again, make a recommendation to council to direct P&Z to expeditiously move to rezone the properties that were previously zoned light industrial to correct a oversight that was made previously. So with that, I'll make a motion that says I would like the Airport Advisory Board makes a recommendation to City Council Lago Vista to direct P&Z to rezone the properties that are light industrial category to the east side of the airport to C4 or C4 airport expeditiously to protect the beauty of the hill country area that is important around in our community.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, what we're actually asking them to do is ask either the city council or the P&Z to initiate the application. It will then follow its normal course, but the zoning ordinance says one of those two bodies is the one other than the property owner that can initiate that application. So that it's a very subtle difference, but that's what we're asking the motion to state.
All right, would you please repeat that for me, and I'll try to restate the motion.
Either the city council or the P&Z to initiate the zoning district change application?
All right, then the recommendation, my motion is that we ask either the city council or the P&Z to initiate the zoning change application for the properties east side of the airport from light industrial to C4, commercial 4.
Roy, I actually want to clarify, when I look in the ordinances, category C4 has a very limited, in the table of what type of businesses can be done in C1, C2, C3, C4. C4 has very few check marks. I would have guessed that C2 would be the appropriate zoning for the, and I'm wondering if maybe the motion should be, instead of specifying C4, if it should be to initiate the transition from light industrial to the appropriate commercial zoning for the area.
That could be.
We had considered and talked about C4 airport, Paul, which is even another category. And the city has broadened the amount of businesses that are allowed in there by previous definition. That's part of the airport action plan as well. There's a whole list in there. I mean, from a drapery manufacturer, plumbing supply, you name it. So there's still a lot of options. But C4 airport does an interesting thing as well as a category, because the city purchased lot 15 on the airport. There's a taxiway back through there. It is possible for someone to build a hangar over there and taxi onto the airport with an agreement, if it was C4 airport.
As a discussion point, Paul, the environment of the airport now is all under C4 aviation.
Yeah.
There's a handful of RRA, which is the residential hangars, but not many. You're for the most part, Mr. Awalt is correct. There's one or two spots that aren't that.
Yes.
Right. And if I can jump in on that a little bit also to speak into the airport action plan, part of what was highlighted by the aviation engineer who helped with that was for future allowability of hangar construction back in that area. So I think that was maybe the interest in making those C4, just so that would be the start of that lot 15 that the city had purchased, rather than being tied down, becoming an actual taxiway conduit back there. But it might be, to some degree, it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit to change that zoning to C4, but it does speak to the intent of what the airport action plan did state back in 2015. There would just be the other kind of the other details to work out about how to actually get those aircraft from any of those properties across Rolling Hills Trail and then through lot 15, should that happen. So it's a pretty multifaceted thing that's a lot bigger than just changing the zoning of the properties, but I think it is probably a step in the right direction to stay a little bit more compatible with the plan itself.
Well, and Mr. Prince is accurate, though. The important thing is to initiate the application. Once
Sure.
you do, the actual zoning district is somewhat open. P&Z can recommend whatever they like, and the council can choose other alternatives.
Let's carve out the motion. Is any other member of the board got this down where they'd like to make that motion? Otherwise, I'll struggle and try. All right, we'll make the motion. The motion is that to the city council or P&Z to initiate the application to change the zoning from light of the properties east of the airport, from light industrial to the appropriate commercial category for airport compatible businesses. It might be C4 or C2 or something of the like, but something certainly less intrusive than light industrial. Okay, I have a second.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. All right, does anybody want to tweak that?
I'll offer discussion, Glenn. My cell phone battery died when you were showing us physically on the sheet there where the properties are. Can you just re-highlight that? And is that the entire area that is currently light industrial, or is there a larger area that's currently light industrial?
I believe it only went back a couple blocks, Steve, but so I'm going to give them to go fix that. There's actually a residence right here. There's a house there. So that's already existing residential. But these properties here, we actually have somebody who moved in on this little street right here. If you see my pointer, that actually cleared the land, put up a perimeter fence of some kind of steel paneling, and parked tanker trucks and 18-wheeler trailers in there. It looks like they're cooking meth or something. I don't know, but it's kind of a mess. So open storage is not now, but it's these properties right here.
So your motion is to change all of the current light industrial zoning east of the airport within, I don't know, 1,000 feet or so.
Well, all of the light industrial zoning, we run out of city boundaries. So
Right.
all of the light industrial properties on the east side of the airport to be rezoned to commercial, the appropriate commercial category.
I could be wrong, but I believe it's about 20 properties. Does that sound correct, Glenn?
Or 40.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference. But it's basically Rolling Hills Trail and Ranger Trail, right?
Right, but it goes the entire length of the runway.
Right.
Yes, all the way up. So you could, across from Jim Wood's hangar, they could put in a cement mixing plant. Not good. So
two open stores.
We have a second. We got a second from James. Sorry, my bad. So Mr. Peck put the second on it. Any more discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. All right, moving on. I'll unshare my screen.
Is that unanimous as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to unshare my screen here. I think I got it unshared.
Yep, it's gone from me.
All right, I'm mouse challenged right now to try to find my agenda back. I got it. I haven't figured out how to do the extended screen with two screens yet, so I'm working on that. Apologies to everybody. All right, so that covers those items. So airport operations. This is the one we sort of look to the city and say, okay, how are things going? Because some things recently changed. I'll tell you what, I would like to give some of our members an opportunity to talk. I feel like I'm carrying the load here, but on airport operations, the city recently hired a 20-hour-a-week person. It was explained to me early on by the previous city manager, this person would be the airport manager, but we are not sure if they've given that person enough authority to act as such. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I've never seen that person.
Yeah, I have a little commentary. I have seen the person. I do find it a little bit troubling that the city did want to hire somebody for the airport, but did not make any steps to consider the airport advisory board for any commentary on that position, unfortunately. We probably do have some recommendations we could come up with if given the opportunity about how that person could make their 20 hours a week most useful to beautify and maintain the assets at the airport.
Well, James, just adding to your comments, I think the AAB understanding and the POA understanding the scope and authority of that role is relatively important. So developing the job description, I think it would be valuable for the city to invite us in to develop that job description. I know we're behind the cart a bit here, but if the question does come up or the opportunity presents itself, the authority to Glenn's point and job description as well.
Mr. Chair?
I'm here. Sorry, I clicked out to get a cola.
Yeah, I was just asking to be recognized.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and once again, all of this is secondhand to me, but my understanding is that position was funded by COVID emergency funds. And so even though the intent might have been to transition him into a larger role, I don't think that's the way it's currently funded or budgeted.
I know that as a resident up here and as a member of the POA, we had hoped that this person would be the one to sort of help set some priorities for city maintenance and city action. That could be everything from making sure airplanes are tied down in appropriate places, making sure contracts are kept, making sure that we have certain city restrictions on things you can leave outside and the way things are kept. And we thought that person would sort of be the manager to keep tabs of things. Doesn't appear that that's the case. Super nice guy. I mean, but to pay somebody and he's walking around with a weed whacker when you really need, there's other people in the city who should be carrying the weed. He should be pointing saying, we need the city up here to mow and clear weeds, and getting it prioritized and being that liaison back from what's needed up here to the city, instead of trying to say, hey, can I borrow a weed whacker from the Parks and Rec department so I can come up here and clean up some weeds? That's not what we need. So I think the city would, probably needs to think about what the heck they're doing with that role. It's not that it may not be needed, but I don't think they've correctly given direction to that guy. Who right now I believe he's reporting to Chris Mobley, right?
He is, and that is his supervisor. And I think you're correct about the mowing, but I don't think that's his long-term role. I think their intent is to forward a budget amendment for a new mower, and that Mr. Williams, who works for Mr. Mobley, also is the one that's supposed to be doing that mowing. I think the fact that he was doing what I might call emergency type maintenance work on weeds was intended as a temporary operation. And I'm not so sure exactly. Josh was working on the budget amendment with Mr. Mobley, and when he didn't finish it, it's been a struggle for them to get it in front of council. But I think we're still waiting on that equipment and a storage building that they're going to be buying, and that budget amendment didn't make the 18th agenda either. But I think it's being prepared.
Well, yeah, I think there's been a real gap in what the city has. While the city's in the black up here financially, they have ignored a lot. I mean, let me ask. Look, I know Mr. Awalt. Let me ask Mr. Awalt to give a little history lesson on how what the contribution the POA has made and why that was set up. So. And what I'm getting to here, Jim, is the discussion about, the POA sending an annual maintenance fee or to the city, and why that was, and I'll ask James, the head of the POA, to kind of review where we're at from the maintenance point of view.
Historically, the POA, the airport wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the POA. And contractually, we had two contracts, one to maintain and one to manage the airport. We got out of those contracts 10 years ago. We did the first funding agreement, and it had a renewal for the next 5 years. And now we're under a new funding agreement that, we still got some housekeeping to do on it. That's not on the agenda, but that will be coming forth soon as we clean that housekeeping up. I don't know how much more I can say to that. The city has finally put their big boy pants on and has started to take an active role in managing the airport, and the POA has backed off, which is a positive.
Well, let me pass the torch, Jim, to James Peck, who the president of the POA sent a letter to the city at the end of last year, trying to get some help on several of these issues. So, James, would you mind
certainly. So the history, as far as I've observed, from 2013 until last year in 2020. Just the basic things, mowing, replacing any kind of broken runway lights or any other markings around the airport was something that happened, I believe, mostly through the Public Works Department under some direction from the city. And it seemed to happen pretty seamlessly without any real need for input from the POA or any other entity at that point. If the POA or anybody else, any transient aircraft came through, they could always call the city and say, hey, we noticed there was a runway light out here, or we had, grass that was, tall enough where we couldn't see those runway lights, or anything else that was a safety issue. It could be noted anywhere within the city, and it seemed to happen pretty expediently and pretty seamlessly. Last year was the first year where we really started to watch the apple cart become a little bit upset in that regard. The mowing fell off completely, so much so that by the middle of the summer last year, there had been one mow by the city in the early springtime, and the grass had gotten so tall by midsummer that we had one of the residents up here contact the city manager directly and talk to a couple of the people in the city to obtain access to a mower, just to be able to come up and try to mow the runway for us best he could. He had his 14-year-old son out here taking a push mower around the runway lights just to try to get things up to snuff. And unfortunately, after that happened, that didn't get any attention to create any better priority from a city standpoint. The grass was that tall again by September, and there still wasn't any additional action. So it seems that somewhere along the way, the communications about how that process was managed from a city standpoint fell apart at the same time that this 20-hour airport personnel position was being created. And there was something that must have been lost in translation. What I would love, just so I can figure out how to help everybody rebuild this thing from the start, is a better understanding from the city perspective of how the airport was maintained, maybe for the previous 5 to 10 years, and then what may have changed in the past 1 to 3 years where it started to fall apart. And then also I'd love to know what that looked like from a budgeting perspective. Because we've seen a POA contribution in the neighborhood of $20,000 a year for that number's been accurate for about 15 years, and it was a little bit less than that prior to then. And that was basically just for simple things: mowing, keeping the runway lights on, keeping our weather station maintained. And it's been disheartening to watch that fall apart a little bit.
It's $23,600 now, as I recall.
Correct. So it's continued to escalate, and unfortunately, the performance on the city side of that contract has continued to deteriorate, even though the funding has escalated. So it's creating an unfortunate disparity.
And I mean, to be fair, I mean, I don't want to be the only guy complaining about this, but the POA, the board of directors of the POA here, sent a letter to the city, to Mayor Tidwell and the council at the end of the year saying, hey guys, we send you $23,600 a year to please help with offset the maintenance costs, and you're not doing any maintenance. We got broken lights, potholes. Yep. We had a sink deal. We couldn't get anybody out to fix it, and it was like I think everybody was pretty frustrated by that. And I guess I'm bringing this up now because that 20-hour person should be helping the city understand these needs, not being the guy that has to change the light bulbs. So,
right, and that letter unfortunately went over by certified mail, and that was prior to December. It was actually, I think it was about a month before, and that was certified mail. A copy went to the mayor and was supposed to be distributed to all of the council as well. I'm assuming here that with the departure of the previous city manager, that might not have gone as intended. I'm not sure, Mr. Prince, you may be able to speak into it, to whether you've ever seen a copy of that letter, but unfortunately from the POA side, we've never received a formal or informal acknowledgement about any of those concerns.
I've not seen that letter.
And that's a bummer. Okay, so we might take that digital and make sure that it gets into, for sure, into your hands, but into the hands of the rest of the council as well, along with trying to understand where the breakdown was, because like I said, that was sent certified mail. We know it got there. We know it was addressed to the mayor and the council and the city manager. So it should have, copies were intended to be distributed. The previous city manager did acknowledge that he was aware of the letter. So I'm not sure why that didn't ever make it around, but it basically just highlighted the points that I've already made, just about some of the breakdown of the maintenance happening and us trying to gain a better understanding and just trying to be proactive and help. We never want to be perceived as complaining by any means, because we're not. We just want to help make it work and try to understand the spots where it doesn't so we can keep it moving.
I know the letter included some requests to the city to say, how often do you plan to mow? in the summer months when the grass is growing, are you going to be out here monthly, bi-monthly? What's the cadence going to be? And nobody can really answer that. In addition, we ended up with some of the folks in the POA, just to let you know, and said, to hell with it, we'll call ABC Pest Control or Commercial Services, have him mow the whole airport, and then just take it out of our funds, out of the funds from the airport to the city. Not the right way to go about it, but it was certainly a hot point in time. So these items under number 7 of airport operations are really an issue. Deciding kind of who do we call to get these things? Does a POA call the people at the airport to get these things prioritized? Because there hasn't been anybody to really react to it.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr.
I think what's paramount, and Paul, you can help us, is get us a contact list of the chain of command with regard to the responsibilities of the airport. Anytime I have called James LeBlanc, it got done like the next day. But I don't know if James is the contact person with ultimate responsibility to delegate things that get done. And I remember when that letter was sent and we sat down and said, look, guys, we can't complain to the city until we put them on notice that this is not getting done. It's not getting accomplished. So that was the purpose of the certified letter, James, my best recollection is let's put them on notice that it's not working. And it sounds like our notice might have got thrown in the trash. But,
unfortunately, it seems so. And Mr. Chamber, you may be able to speak into whether you've seen that or not as well.
And the only thing I know is that the city manager expressed to me, the former city manager expressed his intent to reply. And obviously he did not before he left. I can also, not specifically or precisely, but I can tell you the sequences of events that led to the change. It is true that James LeBlanc, who works for Public Works, was in fact the person who responded to all the maintenance requests as soon as we became aware of them. And I basically, when I became aware of those requests, would notify him and his boss of the request, and his boss would dispatch him. At some point, the previous city manager, once we had a parks director and a personnel person that was responsible for grass cutting at other parks, decided it would be more efficient for that to be the responsible party. And as a result, that's why James is not up there anymore. Now, whether that was a good decision or a bad decision, I don't know. I mean, it was just, all I can tell you is that decision was made. And that's where we are today. There were a few little bumps in the road that may have contributed to some of the problems that there's no reason to go into tonight, but that is who the responsible party is right now. Now, that doesn't mean I can't call James when Mr. Mobley and his folks say we need help. That's certainly available, but the answer is the chain of command that Mr. Awalt was referring to, which was me and James and Eric, that has been disrupted and changed, and not by us.
Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that there was any kind of perceivable handoff of any responsibilities in that regard from my observation. I've spoken with Mr. Mobley very, very briefly, and he seems wholly uninformed on the necessities of the airport. So something needs to be done to bring everybody up to speed and make sure we're on the same page. I'm all about change and getting the right people over the right things and taking it off the plate of those who have other responsibilities. But if we don't pass the chain of command the right way and make sure that people understand what their responsibilities are, it's no wonder it fell apart.
And in all honesty, and this is true, and I'm not trying to but the other side of this coin is that there's a lot of city staff time that probably isn't in the airport budget. Mine's not. Josh's certainly wasn't. Nobody at Public Works was. That may or may not be true with Mr. Mobley, and that may be part of the equation, but that budget was not done by me. you
Right.
know, so, and that change was not done by me. That may be part of it. I'm just guessing. I really don't know.
I'm going to tell you, I think we have some breakdown on a chain of command on getting these things done. I think, James, you just resend the POA letter and, let's, at some point, the city needs to assign support hierarchy for getting things done. I
Yeah,
mean, we've got
it's become clear that that fell apart.
Yeah, and I think that was Josh's intent.
right now. You got a taxi
This would
around
improve things.
it's going to cost you a $25,000 tear down fee, on a cone because we got damage up here and nobody's doing jack squat about it, and that needs to be addressed. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm showing my frustration a little bit, but.
Well, I think it makes sense, and I think it speaks back into the point that I made earlier in the meeting, where this board is the perfect place to flesh out these kind of inconsistencies with the operations. I can't imagine that literally every single person on the board could have had something to contribute when it was time to pass the torch from the previous people who were handling anything to the new ones. The fact of the matter is, it's become very obvious right now that we didn't even understand who the chain of command that was put in place is. So I think the biggest thing is getting an understanding of that and coming up with a plan to fix it where it's broken so we can move this thing forward. Obviously, Mr. Jamber, to your point, some things that used to happen a little more autonomously around here were probably because there were a number of parties within the city infrastructure that felt empowered to help and felt implored to do so because historically that had been part of their job duties, whether it was big on paper or the line items in the budget were in the right place or not. But when big budgetary changes change the hierarchy of who's in charge of things, and those people aren't brought up to speed, it's again, it's obvious for why it's failed. We just have to figure out where we start to get those people kind of spooled up to what needs to happen, and make sure we pick up what's been dropped.
And I think the motives were a little more pure. As you may be aware,
Sure.
There's been a commitment to street repairs, and James's primary duty is paving streets. That's his real job, his day job, if you will. So as we earmarked funds for that purpose, the idea was to get somebody else to take that load to free him up to do other things, like street paving. And I don't think there was any evil intent. I just think James knew what to do a little quicker and was more responsive. And the new guys hadn't gotten up to speed yet. There's probably dozens of reasons I don't know about, but
no doubt. So so right now you're saying that the top of that hierarchy has become Chris Mobley, or are you above Chris Mobley in this hierarchy, Mr. Jamber?
He does not work for me, but I'm certainly, like I was, and James didn't work for me either, nor did Eric, but that didn't stop me from communicating.
No doubt. You've done a fantastic job anywhere that you've been able to be deployed in those regards.
It doesn't matter how it's funded or whatever.
Right.
We would get it done.
Sure.
There were some complications, and I don't need to rehash there was we're down a mower that got damaged, and that budget change I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's for a new dedicated mower for the airport.
Dedicated is good. I'm sure that there was some other mower somewhere in the city that's mowed this airport before when one mower broke.
Yeah.
So.
Like I said, how impactful that was, I don't know, but that was the excuse that I heard.
No doubt. So it sounds like we might actually have a situation where potentially Mr. Mobley should be involved in these airport advisory board meetings as well, or potentially this 20-hour a week airport attendant. It sounds like we have some people who are still going to be out of the loop, who are maybe the most essential people for kind of putting the wheels on this bus and making it roll down the road.
I got an email a little while ago that I shared with somebody that said he was coming.
Just before we get that far, James, going back a couple of conversations quickly, would you mind when you send the letter to Paul, would you copy the Airport Advisory Board members as well?
Absolutely. And just for the record, the date on that letter, I have it pulled back up. That was November 17th, 2020. So
Okay, thank
we'll
you.
make sure that travels digitally and gets followed up, so all the lines of communication are open this time.
And
All right.
then, Paul, just for your edification, from my own experience, from Class Bravo airports, DFW, Houston International, all the way to the Class Echo public airports, and of course there are some interesting anomalies that we have with this airport. But in all of those airports that are partially or fully publicly owned, I'm not aware of any across the United States that has Parks and Rec providing the airport maintenance or airport operations. It's always either Public Works or a dedicated group when the budgets are sufficient that are focused entirely on the airport. Just for your edification.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. I mean, we beat that horse pretty good, but it did need to get out there. And, hey, for all you new people, welcome to the board. All right, a couple other items we'll blow through. There's still a need, it's back in the maintenance category of the big windsock being erected. It's been down for 2 or 3 years. And all it takes is somebody pointing and saying, put it right there. I think we're prepared to do that. That the spot will be just to the west side of the pavilion where the picnic table is near the fuel tank. We'll put that up, and we just need it done. And we'll take that discussion to be added on to the Chris Mobley or maintenance group with that. And then the last thing was a discussion about the management and assignment of tie-down spaces. I'm not sure who in the city is taking the leases and tie-down space. The reason I bring this up is our airport today, we have a fuel concession. We sell gasoline to a lot of people coming in and out. That's fantastic. It makes good money for the city, and the city has done a very good job of being leading competitively. We see people here on a Saturday from all over the country who are flying through to buy fuel. That being said, depending on what tie-down space someone who decides to pick because it's convenient for them to park their car or something can really change how these transients have access to the pumps or not. And I wonder if anybody's putting any gray matter thoughts to how to make sure that we assign tie-down spaces and leave enough for transient people who come over for the weekend or stop for a short period of time as well. So I don't know who owns that, but somebody needs to own that, and I think we need to have some input to as a board of managing the airport on which tie-down spaces would make the most sense or not. It's a little mundane. I apologize. It's late. This meeting's kind of running long, but I would like to know who that is. I think we will start the discussion to get that, though. I don't think we need to take any particular action. Paul, I would like to know who's taken the when somebody tries to rent a tie down, do you tell them which one it is? I don't know.
I can give you some history, Mr. Chair. The city manager was supposedly assigning those spaces and knew exactly which ones were available. And when somebody would request a spot, we would put them in touch with him. If we looked for those records so that we could straighten it up, and we had leases that were, not running according to terms and things like that, we determined that that documentation, was not available to us right now. And we have started that process over and are contacting all those leaseholders. And I have assigned somebody on our staff, our new planner, to take over that obligation. And we will be reissuing every one of those leases, and every lease that we have will be an assigned space. And if we have any that aren't numbered, and I think we might have some on the upper level over there by the fuel farm, over by the ramp. And once we determine that we have some that aren't numbered, we're going to send James back over there and number them. And we were told that was being done. We're not sure it was being done as diligently as it should be. And we've got somebody who will be taking that on as their sole responsibility. And we're redoing all the leases.
Well, thank you, Roy. I mean, James and Steve, when if you get Roger up here, maybe you add that to your list.
Yes,
Well,
certainly.
we weren't aware that wasn't being done until recently.
Show them the crowded area by the fuel pump and explain how, on a busy weekend, it can be a disaster to try to get airplanes in and out there to get them fueled up. It's just the way things are laid out here. We got to be smart. All right, that kind of completes the agenda items that I had here. There's one more on a consent agenda, and it's we don't have any draft minutes submitted, so from the last meeting to approve. So
We should from that meeting. I know I was the one who took care of those minutes in Linda Aird's absence, and they had been sent over. So where do those need to go to make sure that they get put in the right spot?
Can we do that at the next meeting, Paul? Can we approve minutes from the 2 previous meetings? Okay, we'll do that next meeting. You just send them to the whole airport advisory board and make sure Roy's on it, because he sets the agenda and puts it on the city calendar.
That's perfect.
I don't set it. I'm the secretary that types it.
Well, you filter it for us and make sure it gets to get to Sandra and get it done. So I appreciate that.
And most of you who know me well know how poorly I type. So let me warn you about that as well. I do have one item in case you guys have the ability to send the message. With the weather, we lost a compressor on one of your air conditioning units at the pilot's lounge. That replacement part has arrived and it'll be fixed at roughly 9 to 9:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Just in case anybody has any plans, that's probably not a good time to be in the lounge, but right after that would be a great time to be in the lounge.
Actually, we see that lounge being used. I see it being used more by people who come to visit our city than any of us. And that's really what it's there for. And that's fantastic. So we had a big airplane, a twin engine airplane pulling the other day, met the folks. They were off to use the restroom, borrow the car, and they were spending the night here in Lago Vista and doing what they do. So that's why those facilities are there, is to bring people here, spend money. So anyway,
it will be fixed tomorrow, is our understanding.
All right. So for the board, adjourn.
So this is a parliamentary comment. So the Open Meetings Act requires that this board cannot communicate about things between us, within us. And so I think, James, when you were suggesting you were going to send the minutes out to everybody, I think that would officially be violating the Open Meetings Act. So the right way to do it is to send it to, I think, Mr. Jambor and the chairman. That's typically what's done on these kind of things. And then it would be included in the packet for the next meeting. So it's a little bit overkill, but there is state law here, and we have to be.
I'm all for avoiding conflict. I like that. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, and the way that works, when I get them, I'll post them on the website and send you an email that's where they are.
Yeah, and then that way, everybody in the public has access to them, just like you all do, and then we're good to go.
Wonderful. All right, I'm done. Anybody else got what motion? Huh?
I think you had future agenda items. Glenn, we tried to get the discussion of the F4 maintenance on here, and it didn't get on here. Roy, I need your help on this because it's not on the agenda, but I think the mayor is up against a timeline where he needs to sign off on that lease, and I think we wanted to have that discussion in here. So, Roy, if you can advise us on how we deal with this issue in a timely fashion and meet the letter of the meetings law, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that what we need this board to do necessarily impacts that lease. But every year we have to do that. We photograph it and we mention the condition. I always thought, I mentioned it last year because I thought they were responsible for that maintenance. Turns out they're not. We are. And now I know why they ignored my request to have take a closer look at it. The main thing I guess we need to do at some point is determine whether that thing needs a paint job or just a good power washing. You guys know more about airplanes than I do. I know about the.
I'm the guy that painted it originally. Rich Piasecki and I had PPG Industries donate $20,000 worth of catalyzed urethane that's on there.
Right. Emron, I assume.
Oxidized is what it is. I mean, that was my business. A good power washing with a soft bristle scrub would help it immensely.
And you think that's all it needs?
I think that is a step in the right direction. It's chalk.
I got you.
The oxidation, you know, you can take a trisodium phosphate and a soft bristle brush and a power washer and clean it, and it would go a long ways. Now, if we want to get a group of volunteers out there or get that done,
I say we keep Lago Vista beautiful out there. And we'll buy them barbecue for their trouble, right? No, but I failed to take a look at it. Hey, Walt, let's you and me walk down there and just take a look at it and see what we think, and maybe we can get the group together to wash it and all good. But tell them, I don't think it's a paint job this year, guys. That's my feeling today.
That's great. And so I'll add to my Councilor Liaison comments section of the agenda that I think we're going to be advising the mayor to go ahead and sign off on the renewal of the lease of that. And then you guys got the maintenance part of it.
Yeah, for a background, guys, he's talking about the jet that's out front. It's an F4 jet. And it's the Air Force's property. They own it. And we have it on loan from them as a museum piece or a gatekeeper, and we are responsible to maintain it. Now that the city owns it, Rusty Allen brought that up here many years ago, and one of the other jets is long gone. It's been lifted off, but if you don't want it anymore, it gets real expensive to transport it back, and once you say you want it, you got to pay to get it. To transport it back. The Air Force will take it in Tucson, Arizona, right? But you got to get it there. So
yeah, I'm told that the preferred process, if you want to avoid the burden, is to find an airport that wants it and let them pay to move it from point A to point B. But that anything else is kind of cost prohibitive.
Right. I mean, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars or $100,000 range. Okay, guys. Motion to adjourn.
Well, I just have one. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to labor this or keep us any longer, but as one of the rookies here this evening, I'm really interested in contributing in every way I can, obviously. And I'm curious if we have a written charter. Do we have a basis of operation so I understand how best to apply my time and energy?
I think that might be either, I don't know that this board is in the city charter, but it's definitely in, I think, Chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances.
This board is? Does it create? Okay, and that establishes the basis. That's good. Let me look at that then. Thank you, Roy. I don't have anything else. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, you can do the motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Meeting.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.